Welcome everyone to today's webinar on project orientation, a practice for successful project implementation. My name is Candi Carmi and I'm going to be your tour guide today, or your GPS, whichever one is less annoying. And I'm from the Eastern Region Training and Technical Assistance Center, which is a resource of the Administration for Native Americans. I'm a technical assistance provider, and I've been doing this for about 8 years now, and I'm from the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. So let's take a look at why we're on this journey. You might have started a new project, and it indicates in the application or project documents that you're going to do a project orientation. That's great. You also might be starting a new project that doesn't state anything about having a project orientation. It might be an A&A project, it might be a non-A&A project. Whatever type of project that you're starting, and whether or not it's written into your application or not, it's really a good idea to have a project orientation or kickoff to get all of your project staff, partners, organizational members all on the same page, and it lays the groundwork for you to ultimately have a successful project. So let's take a look at the horizon and the landscape on the screen. Right now we're looking at a paved road. That's always good. Some gently rolling hills. There's no construction and no storm clouds, so that's always good. But we see a lot of different starting points, and there's a lot of places to go in our project. And that's the way projects actually flow. There's gently rolling hills sometimes, and then sometimes there's hiccups or uncertainty. If you look on the screen, on both sides of that road, there's fog and uncertainty. You don't know what's out there. Hopefully, by starting off your project with a kickoff or project orientation, you'll be on the way to navigating your project and ultimately ending up where we would all like to see you end up, with a successful project. As we go through this webinar today, I'm going to be speaking about some A&A specific documents throughout this webinar, but a lot of the concepts that we're using today aren't necessarily going to prohibit you from using these ideas for project implementations or kickoff meetings for other projects. So let's go to our first stop today, the Administration for Native Americans, which is a program located within the United States Department of Health and Human Services under the Administration for Children and Families. A&A serves all Native Americans, including federally recognized tribes, American Indian and Alaska Native organizations, Native Hawaiian organizations, and Native populations throughout the Pacific Basin. A&A provides discretionary grant funding for community-based projects in 3 program areas: Social and Economic Development Strategies, or SEDS, Native Languages, and Environmental Regulatory Enhancement. Check out A&A's website. The URL is at the bottom of your screen. If you haven't already, there's a lot of really good information there, great resources, and you can find out a lot more about the Administration for Native Americans. So let's go to our next stop. Oh, Roadside Assistance already. As I indicated earlier, I work for the Eastern Region Training and Technical Assistance Center, which is located right outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. As technical assistance providers, we provide pre-application trainings, project planning and development trainings, as well as post-award trainings. We also work with both applicants on the development of their projects as well as with grantees on implementing their project and troubleshooting. We are one of 4 roadside assistance providers. We have counterparts located in the Western region, in the Pacific Basin, as well as in Alaska. We're all here to ensure that you have a successful project. So please remember to reach out to us at any time if you have any questions or need any help. So let's get started on the journey. The first thing we're going to do is talk about driver preparation. Just like you get ready for a car trip, you're rested, you've maybe taken your triptych and you've logged out where you're going to go and planned out where you're going to stop. You need to do the same thing when you're getting ready for your project orientation. You also need to ask yourself, who are you going to invite? Who are going to be your passengers in your car? You also need to look at what materials do you need to have on hand, if there's going to be any stops along the way, and how do you stay on course. So let's look at driver preparation. The first thing that you want to do is review all of the application documents. And again, by driver preparation, what I'm talking about is a person who's been tasked with either the project manager, project director, project coordinator, the person who is going to be steering the ship, so to speak, and being the driver on the project and leading the team, hopefully, on a successful journey. If you are that driver, again, you're going to review the application documents first and make sure that you're thoroughly familiar with them. Applications can be quite hefty, so you want to go through everything on that. The next thing you want to do is familiarize yourself with the award documentation. And what I mean by that is if you are an A&A, project award recipient, you would have received a notification, and probably it looks like about 61, 65 pages along with that award notification. Included in that package would have been a notice of grant award, and that's the document that indicates what your federal award is, what your non-federal share requirement is, and it lays out also your project budget. And we're going to go into this a lot more later in the presentation. Also included in that award documentation package is information on the reporting requirements for the grant, as well as samples of the forms. And there's also information in the package on how to sign up for Grant Solutions. So you really want to make sure that you read through that entire package. Again, it looks daunting, but it's not all federalese. You need to be familiar with it. So now the driver's ready. Who are you going to invite? Well, you're definitely going to invite project staff. Sometimes with projects, the staff is already assembled. You've already internally had those people on hand. They're going to move right over and work on the project. Sometimes you're hiring folks for your project. I'd recommend that if you have staff currently already on board, that you go ahead and have that project orientation, even if you need to be hiring additional staff members. You can always do another orientation for new hires. But go ahead and start off that with a project orientation for your project staff. Accounting staff need to be included. They're going to be some of your best friends on your project, so you really want to have them on board for your project orientations. Your leadership. It could be either your board of directors if you're a nonprofit organization, or it could be your tribal council or tribal leadership. In your application, some partnerships might be identified. So if you have partners written into your application that you've identified for providing resources of some kind, time or materials, you need to have an orientation for them. And your community. Now, if we were to do a head count of all of these various players, we would probably need a bus or something a lot bigger to put them all in. Well, don't do that. Don't consider trying to do this all in one meeting. It's much better to focus your orientations on your audience. Here's why. Your orientation for your project staff might be an all-day meeting, or at least a good chunk of a day. Your orientation with your leadership might be a half hour, if most. So you really want to take the time to break out the project orientations and tailor them to your audience. It'll maximize and make it much more effectual your use of time, and also you're using their time effectively too. So rather than putting everyone into one vehicle, use separate cars. And here for the leadership, I wanted to put a limousine there and forgot. So everybody's off on different cars. So now what do you need to have on hand? Well, we've already talked a little bit. The application narrative. Typically, the application narrative runs anywhere average about 20 to 25 pages. So you want to have copies of those available. The objective work plan for the project year. When you're doing these project orientations, I would do them to cover a one-year period, or what you're currently being funded for. I wouldn't want to muddle it up with subsequent project years if you have those. While you could synopsize them, I would focus on the currently funded project year when I'm doing my orientations. Similarly, you're going to have the budget for the project year. And again, we're going to go into this a little bit further down the road, but you do want to make sure that you have the budget that marries to the notice of grant award that A&A provided. Administrative forms. Let's say you're doing a lot of local travel, so you have mileage in your budget. Does your tribe or organization have mileage logs already created? That's the type of thing I mean by administrative forms. Do you use purchase orders? That would be another example of an administrative form to have on hand. And lastly, tracking sheets. And tracking sheets sometimes, and this is more specific to the type of project you're doing, sometimes you're doing something that is similar to another project that you've done, especially language projects where there may be teaching and keeping attendance logs of some kind. If your organization has already created that, you can use, and you just want to modify a little bit, have those on hand. But another thing is that might be, those tracking sheets might be something that you create when you get in the car with your project staff. So that might be something that you develop in that meeting with them. So now we're going to start the orientations. And I'm not going to say meet with this group first, meet with that group second, because it's all dependent on time and availability. But I would suggest that you try to meet with your accounting staff first. And when you meet with them, you want to find out first who is assigned to the project, who is going to be the staff accountant. And that person is probably also going to be the same individual who's attending the A&A post-award training. So you want to get to be buddies with whoever this person is. You want to give them a copy of your approved project budget and a copy of that notice of grant award I mentioned. Oops, here's one right up on the screen. That's what that notice of award looks like. So you want to give a copy of that to your accounting staff person. And we'll talk about this in a few seconds more. We'll look a little deeper at that form. You also want to go over with your accounting staff the non-federal share requirement. You want to go over what the sources are or source, and inquire about any documentation that may be needed to provide that to the accounting folks. Do they need anything specific from you as a project person, or is it something that's done internally through the general ledger entries of some kind? The next thing that you need to talk about with them is procurement procedures. Do you use purchase orders? If I want to order a piece of equipment, how long is it going to take to get that purchase order approved? What's the amount of lead time I need to provide for to accounting for purchasing? What are any organizational requirements? What type of backup do I need to provide them? Do I need to provide original receipts? Make sure that you're familiar with your organization's accounting practices, and make sure that accounting and you are on the same page. Remember, this is the start of a beautiful relationship, so you definitely want to be on a good foot with your accounting folks. The next thing to go over is accounting codes, and this is dependent on your organization. A lot of organizations assign specific accounting numbers to projects. So if your organization does that, make sure that you have all those codes. You also want to go over your financial obligations that have to do with the grant, and in specific, the SF 425 reporting. That's your financial reports. And there's a copy of that financial report in your award documentation that we talked about previously. So you can get a copy of that form if your accountant isn't already familiar with that, and give that to them. You also want to go over who's going to be doing the drawdowns on accounts, who's going to be drawing down the money from the Division of Payment Management. And when you're talking about the 425, you also want to ask whoever is preparing it in accounting to also give you a copy of it, or whoever's going to be doing the A&A reporting that's required, because on that A&A report there's a spot to enter in dollar amounts. And the last bullet on your screen, major purchases, I put that there as a courtesy. If you have anything in your budget that's a big ticket item, whether it's a piece of equipment or maybe a consultant contract, it's a pretty good size dollar amount, you might want to give the accounting folks a heads up on that, just so that they're aware of when that's going to pop up and when you need those funds. And it's just a courtesy to them. Remember, you're starting off, this is just one and the first of many meetings with accounting. You really want to start a good relationship with them, because they're going to be invaluable to you as you go forward with your project. So I told you we were going to look at this Notice of Grant Award, and here it is. Up on, there's a lot of information on here. Typically, and this is just an example of one, typically these are 1 to 2 pages in length. There's another page that has, usually this remarks box in 26 has more information in it, so it causes it to go over to a second page. But there's good information on here. One of the things is up in box number 3, award number. There's an 8-character award number that your project has been assigned, and that's going to follow you around for the duration of your project. So you're looking up there in that award number and you're saying, wait a minute, there's 8, and there's 2 more, 10, 2 more, oops, there's 12 numbers up there. Well, the first 8 numbers or characters are your actual A&A project number. That 01 would indicate that you are in the first year of a project, and that 00 basically indicates that this is the initial approved notice of award for the year. You can have different notices of awards issued in a project year if you do anything and make any changes to your budget. So let's look at number 8, your budget period. Well, that's the dates of your project year. Again, this is an example because A&A projects don't start on June 30th. If you look at box number 9, your project period, it indicates that this project is a 3-year project. It's running from 2012 to 2015. An important box is that box number 17 that in the middle of the page that shows your award computation. It indicates in line A your non-federal share. What is your match requirement? And it also indicates what your federal award is. And in box 16, your approved budget, it shows the budget that's been approved for the budget period or the year. And it should total number 17 if you add those two up. And this is what I was talking about, making sure that your budget matches the NGA. In this case, this person or this project should have a budget that's $100,000. Now, a lot of times during negotiations, right before you are funded, a lot of times there's changes that are made to the budget. So you want to make sure that you have a budget that matches identically with the numbers on this NGA. So you're looking at this, and let's say that you have in your budget local travel in the amount of $1,500. A lot of tribes and organizations would put local travel under the travel object class category in number 16. Different organizations have different cost procedures. Well, if you're looking at this NGA, there's 0 there. So if I got this and I'm looking at my budget and my budget says I have $1,500 and I'm looking at this and it says I have 0, I might get kind of wrapped around the axle and think, oh, A&A didn't approve, or whoever, the awarding agency, didn't approve my local travel. What you need to do in that instance is go down and look at box 26. If any dollar amounts were moved around by the Office of Grants Management, it'll be indicated in that remarks section of the Notice of Grant Award. And it'll indicate something like, local travel in the amount of $1,500 was moved from travel to other, because that's where A&A and OGM put local travel. So you need to read that remarks section just to make sure that if anything was moved around, it'll indicate it there how it was moved. Now, if I was a project person and managing this project, what I would also do is take my line item budget, and that $1,500, I would marry it back to this budget and move the $1,500 in travel down to the other in my budget that I was working with as my project budget, so that my budget, my line item budget, aligns with this object class categories and the line item budget that's on this NGA. You'll just find that if you take that extra time, it'll help you if you have to do any grant modifications or budget modifications going forward. And this is something that if you need help with it, that's where you go to your roadside assistance. That's what we can help you with. I've done that a lot in helping create another budget. And what I would call it is something like A&A budget year 1, and something that you had it named so that it was the budget that aligned with the Notice of Grant Award. And sometimes accounting will make those changes also, but oftentimes they don't because costs are booked differently. So you might just give them a copy also of the budget that you've prepared, moving those costs into the object class categories. So that's a lot on the Notice of Grant Award. And again, if you have any questions about this, you can just reach out to one of your TA centers or your program specialist. So now that we've got all that really great information from accounting, one of the next good meetings to have would be that project staff orientation. And when I'm setting up this orientation, what I would do is hand out copies of the application narrative before the meeting. That way everyone has time to read through the document, mark it up with any questions, and they're ready for your project staff orientation. You could also give them a copy of the objective work plan along with that narrative, but you're going to be thoroughly going over it in the project orientation. So I would hand out copies of that objective work plan as well as highlighters, and I would start going over step by step all of the activities that are in that project year. And there's an example of the objective work plan form. If you have a copy, yours might look a little different if you have the grants.gov version, but the content is the same. But up on your screen is an example of one. Now, there's only 2 activities there. You should have a lot more than 2 activities. And that's why this meeting is probably going to take a good chunk of a day, because you're going to go through each activity and discuss what's going on, who's responsible for the activities, who is going to be involved in the activities, when activities start and when they end. And as you're going through this, your project staff are going to be highlighting which activities they play a role in. As you're going through the activities, if there's any associated budgeted project cost, you're going to discuss them. And this is a good time to start sharing some of that information you got from accounting. Information about your organizational purchasing procedures, those accounting codes if they've assigned them, any procurement and federal guidelines. All of that information needs to get to your project staff so that you're all on the same page. While you're going over the OWP, you might want to explain a little bit about the OWP, since it is the basis for your ANA project reporting. So the activities listed on the objective work plan are going to be reported on in your project report, also known as your OPR. So you want to make sure that someone is taking, and as activities are completed, that you're jotting down information about that activity completion so that it can be reflected in your reporting. Also during this meeting, you want to go over any leveraged resources and any forms for tracking leveraged resources. Sometimes leveraged resources could be volunteer hours. Who's going to be tracking that? It could also be community meetings or community participation of some sort. Anything that's being counted as leveraged resources needs to be tracked, because you are going to be reporting on that in your OPR report. So you want to set up any kind of tracking mechanisms and make sure that your staff is aware of what is supposed to be tracked to meet that leveraged resource obligation. If there's any job postings or positions that have not been filled or that are supposed to be filled shortly, you might want to go over that with your team just so that you can finalize that posting and get it to HR after the meeting, and for whenever you are going to get around to posting that position for hire. And the next thing that you want to do is, just like with your accounting meeting, this is not your only meeting with your project staff. You're going to be having meetings the duration of the project. So set up a good schedule of recurring team meetings so that you can keep everyone in the loop. If there's any hiccups in the project, you can address them. If you're moving along expertly, you can also discuss that. So you just want to make sure that you set up a schedule of recurring team meetings to make sure everyone's on track. So you're going to meet with your leadership, and if you recall, I said that one might be a shorter meeting because it's very dependent on their time and availability. Typically, our leadership of our tribes and organizations, those folks are really busy, and it's going to be hard sometimes to get on their agenda. But you need to do this. This is an important part of the project orientation. With your tribe or tribal leadership, you might not get a face-to-face with them. But what I would suggest is you provide them with a synopsis of the project, and you can just get that written out, and also include in it information on the non-federal share commitment. And the synopsis of the project and the review of the non-federal share should be for both groups regardless. A lot of times these applications were written a year ago. I mean, I can't remember what I was doing yesterday. I know a lot of people can't remember what they were doing last year or what they committed to. So this is a good way to make sure that everyone is on the same page and knows what the sources of the non-federal share are and what's expected. And that way, if there's any kind of, if there was new leadership brought in, for example, maybe they didn't commit to that, now's the time to get that nailed down and make sure that everyone understands that non-federal share commitment. Like I said, if you are trying to get in with your tribal leadership and you're not successful, what I would do is write up the synopsis of the project, include that non-federal share commitment information, and I would give it to my supervisor to forward on to either the tribal council or the leadership. But at least you're making them aware and making them cognizant of the responsibilities of your tribe or organization. The next thing you want to do, or one of the things that you want to do, is meet with your partners. Meeting with partners can sometimes be a little problematic, especially if there is distance involved. A lot of times our partners are colleges or universities. It could be another tribe. It could be another organization outside of the state. So you might want to consider meeting virtually if distance is an issue. You can use a platform such as GoToMeeting, and there's a lot of other sources out there. You could even Skype the meeting if there's, depending on the number of partners that you have. Just like you did with your leadership, you want to provide a brief overview of the project. And you want to review with them their commitments to the project and the timeline for providing those resources. I've seen a lot of projects where partners have dropped out or pulled out of projects. And it would have really been nice to have known a little bit earlier or not been surprised by that dropping out. If you have this meeting at the onset of your project and go over the commitments, are they providing materials? Are they providing time? And go over when you expect those resources to be provided. And everyone is on the same page. That way, again, you're reminding them of their commitment in case they forgot, and you're assured that they're going to provide them. Conversely, if they say, nope, we're not available for that, or we can't do that, it gives you the time to be able to find someone else to meet that commitment of either time or resources or whatever it is that they were going to be providing. You want to meet the community, and this could be either a face-to-face meeting or, which is always great. That's good to have a face-to-face meeting and let everyone know about the project. But it might also be something, and which I would recommend, is that you notify the community via a news release. Do you have a tribal newsletter or newspaper? Put a news release in there, a couple of paragraphs about the project, who to contact to find out a lot more information about it. This is really going to be helpful, especially if you're dependent on community participation for your project. If you have your website, and I've seen a lot of project folks create a separate web page dedicated to their project. That's really great, makes it easy to find. But you can also just add information on your website, for example, in the events section or the calendar of the website, to let the community know of upcoming events, as well as I would also post on there a little bit about my project. You could also do this with any kind of social media that you utilize. A next thing to think about is community events, health fairs, powwows, sporting events. Do you have an elder center, anything like that where you can put up a flyer or information about your project? You always want to keep the community informed. Again, just like with the dropping out of the partners, I've been on projects at their conclusion where folks have commented and said, we did not know about this project. We did not know this project existed. You don't want to be running a project and not have anyone know in your community that this project exists. So keep them at the forefront of information about your project. So now that we've had all these orientations and talked about our project over and over again, probably we're getting pretty tired of this about now, what do we need to do to stay on course? As you're doing all of these project orientations, I would create a folder on the documents that I used with each group's orientation. So I would have copies, with the project staff, I would put in a copy of the application and the OWP marked up, have all of that together, my little synopsis that I created for the partners and the leadership. I'd have folders on that. I would keep this make one up for each orientation meeting that you have. I would also create a sign-in sheet documenting the individuals who came to the orientation. And this is really key. Definitely need to do this for your project staff orientation. That way, when someone comes up and says, gee, I didn't know about that, you can say, well, you were at that project orientation that we had on October 15th, and we went over it. But more so than that, it's just a good way to keep track of who received the orientation, especially if you plan on hiring more people. As new staff come on board, or if you're getting new partners or going to be acquiring new partners during your project, if you have a tribal election and new leadership comes on board, all of these will require having yet another project orientation. So now you can go and pull that folder that you created and do the orientation for the new individuals. And of course, with subsequent project years, you're going to have to do this all over again. It might not be as time-consuming with the subsequent years. Hopefully you have the same staff on board, but you're going to need to do the same thing, going over your objective work plan, the roles and responsibilities of the project staff. You're going to need to do that with accounting, give them the new budget and your new NGA for your new year, as well as go over any obligations of the partners and go over with the leadership Their non-federal share commitment, you need to do this for each project year at the beginning. And remember, you always want to keep your community apprised of what's going on in the project. It's just a good practice. It's a good way to keep them in the loop and have that community buy-in. It's really invaluable. And you know, there's the joke about the husband who never asks for directions when he's driving. Well, no matter who you are, ask for directions. If you need help, you have a wealth of resources available to you. You have your program specialist who's there to help you. You have your Office of Grants Management individual to help you. And you have us, the TA providers in all 4 regions. We're here to help you navigate this journey and get on the road to successful project implementation. Another one of the resources that we have is, just like what you're on right now, webinars. Webinars are held every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. And they're recorded, so you can view them as often as you would like. If you go to ANA's website, and the URL is up on your screen, select the Resources tab, and right in the middle of the page, you're going to type in the word webinar and press enter, and you'll get a listing of every webinar that's been recorded by ANA. And the topics, there's a number of different topics, everything from developing an application to implementing a project to topics of interest to Native communities. So there's just all different types of webinars that we have available. Next week's webinar is an exciting one. It's going to be on the super circular. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to register for that one. If you want to register for it and you haven't already, you can go to the Events tab on ANA's website. So while this is just the first step in a long journey on your way to project success, no matter if it's written in your application or not, or your project documents, starting off with project implementation or a project kickoff really lays down the foundation. It establishes relationships with the key players, your project staff, your accounting, your partners, and your leadership, and your community, and which will help you hopefully take that step to ultimately reaching project success. So now we're going to open up to questions that you may have, and also if anyone out there has any suggestions for things that maybe they did in a project orientation that really was successful and really helped. So we're going to open it up for questions now. If you go up to your and look, you should have on the right-hand side of your screen a navigation, a control panel. You can raise your hand and it will unmute you. And you can, if you have a microphone, we can go ahead and just unmute you and you can ask your question, or you can type a question in down in the bottom of the control panel.
First question from Joe White. How can I get a copy of the presentation?
We can send it out to you, Joe. This is a new platform that we're using, and I'll give it a little bit of a promo. This is a Prezi presentation, and it's you can go to a website called at www.prezi.com. And unfortunately, you can't, it's very difficult to print it out. So we can go ahead and just give you a Word version of it and send it out to you after the presentation concludes. You'll probably get it early tomorrow. But you also have, like I said at the end, you also have the ability to view this as many times as you would like to. So that recording of this webinar will be available in about 2 weeks on ANA's website. You can also access it on our website at www.anaeastern.org.
Joseph, I see your hand is up. Would you, as long as you have a microphone, you should be able to talk now.
I don't have an actual question at this moment because I may have a million questions, truthfully. And so far, I've been getting some really great assistance from Denise Litz and Rondell Clay, so that's really wonderful. I wanted to say hello to Candi and that it's really great to hear your voice again. I took part in the training in Minnesota last spring, which was really very helpful. And I just want to, state to everybody that I'm just so extremely pleased to be a new recipient, my organization, of the ANA grant, and I look forward to, our project playing out in the next 2 years. So that's all I wanted to say today.
Well, thanks, Joseph. How could I forget you? I definitely remember you. I remember that you were in my training up in that blizzard. So.
Yes.
Yes, I do remember.
Wonderful time.
Yes. So I am very, very glad to hear that you were funded, and I'm excited about working with everyone who was recently funded, as well as with Rondell. Our whole team wants to congratulate everyone who was recently awarded.
Candi, one of the things that I learned at and which is very true with ANA, is that during the training, you actually said that success is what ANA wants for everyone, and that ANA makes themselves very available for any kind of assistance that we might need, And during the application process, I found that to be very true. It was going back and forth with the person, for my Eastern region, it was Rondell Clay. She did a fabulous job in working with me to make sure all of my little ducks were in order and all that good stuff with my application. And now that I am a recipient, immediate, connection with her, and like I said, Denise Litz. So ANA is definitely doing everything they said they would do to make sure the success is there. So, the big thing now is to, as the project plays out, is to pay attention to the OWP, and just staying on track with all of that, and making sure that all reports are in when they're due and all that good stuff. So for me, this is the first time I'm working with a grant like this, so it's going to be very interesting. And at the same time, I know that I will build great relationships with people, because I'm the type of person that if I have a question, I'm not going to hesitate to ask or to seek the help that I need, because I want to make sure I'm getting everything correct. So I will have questions definitely in the future.
Great. Well, we should hire you as our marketing executive for the...
Okay, I take the job.
Yes, because you're doing a great job of tooting our horns. But you bring up a really good point, and one for the audience. It may seem like there's a lot of front-end help right when you get funded, but we are here throughout the duration of your project. No matter what you encounter, we just pick up your phone, get on your computer and send us an email. We're here to help. And it's not just at the beginning of your project. It's not just when you're doing your reports. It's through the duration. And no question is a silly question.
See, I've been assured that by the two ladies that I've mentioned, that throughout the duration of the 2 years, they will be totally available, and so that's really great.
A question. Are grantees expected to attend webinars every week, or are some mandatory and others voluntary?
Webinars are by choice, and probably if you are on listservs of other agencies, you might be getting quite a few requests for webinars. There are no, if it is a mandatory webinar, we will indicate that. But typically our webinars are not mandatory. It's by choice. If you have the time and the interest in the topic, then sign up for it.
Great, thank you, Candy. Here's one from Adrian Swallow. When should we start and finish the first orientation?
Well, that's dependent on, like I was saying at the beginning, if you have staff on board currently, if you already have your accounting staff, I would do one of those two almost as soon as, as soon as is practically possible. Especially that accounting one, because you're laying down, you're getting all the practices laid down for the financial management of the grant. And then you're taking that information and relaying it to your project staff. So I would try to have these orientations in within the first 2 weeks of the project onset.
Okay, wonderful, Candy. What is non-federal share commitment more specifically?
The non-federal share requirement is the 20% match that you were required to provide for an A&A. If you're talking about an Administration for Native Americans project, it is the 20% match that you are obligated to provide each project year.
My question would be, with the funding that we receive for the project, if I already have a bank account, of course, for my organization, is it best to use that account, or would it be better to set up a separate bank account just for this funding?
The federal government does not require you to have a separate bank account. However, you do need to keep track of those funds separately from any other monies that are in your bank account. And one of the reasons why A&A does not ask you to get a separate, well, the federal government, not just A&A, ask you to get a separate bank account is because you're not allowed to keep any federal cash on hand. All of the transfers of your A&A funds will be done electronically and can usually be accomplished within a 24-hour period once your account in DPM is set up. And so you should estimate using invoices and salaries how much money you have to pay out, and then a day or two before you cut those checks, draw down that money.
Okay.
Do you have an accountant?
We actually have a financial agent that will be assisting.
Okay, well, and he needs to set up a chart of accounts for you using the object class categories in your federal budget. Oh, here, I've got another question. I've got to look at questions and chats. I forget to divide my attention. I apologize. When should we finish orientation?
There's really no set time. You just want to get everyone started off on, started off on a good footing. And so the sooner you do it, the better. Again, I would try to have them within the first 2 weeks of my project start, and definitely go in and meet with the accounting folks. If you're hiring, let's say you're the only one on board and you don't have any other, you're hiring project staff, then you're going to have to wait to do the project staff one until you get those people on board. But you definitely need to go in and meet with the accounting staff so that you get that information from them, so you get off on a good footing with them as to accounting procedures, and also that they know the budget that has been approved by the federal government. So definitely try to get that one, but it's really dependent on your schedule to a certain degree, and your organization, how they're structured. Typically these are done, you know, within the first month of a project's implementation.
Excellent webinar. Thank you all for joining us, and please check back frequently on the ANA website for upcoming webinars. Have a great day.
Thank you.